Hello divas and dudes, welcome to Powerhouse Bakery. Today I'm going to show you how to use some beautiful herbs from your garden. Look at the beautiful spread I have. I just gathered these this morning from my garden, so I want to show you some of the things that we can do with beautiful herbs that you can grow at home and make fabulous sauces with them. I'm also going to show you how to make a hydration tea, which is a wonderful way to add not only hydration, but also using green tea. It's a great way to add some super nutritious and wonderful antioxidants to your day. So let's get started. First, I want to show you what I got from my garden. This is beautiful oregano. Look at these delicate leaves. They're so pretty for a garnish. We can cut off little segments and add them to a plate for a beautiful display. They're also really wonderful to add into a dish. So what we're going to do is just pull the baby leaves off. I'm going to basically destem. I want to try not to get too many of the tough center stems. And that's going to be the case with most of my herbs from the garden. So as I kind of go through my display, I'm going to show you some of the stems you can eat. Some of them are a little bit tough. So look how beautiful this oregano comes right off. And you can dry the oregano and use it in dishes as well. Whenever you use fresh herbs, just remember that you can actually be really generous with them. If a recipe calls for a tablespoon of herbs, you can use a half a cup when it's fresh. And it's so pretty, so it adds beautiful color, it adds just an extra touch of flavor, but also we know that the eyes eat first. So I absolutely love being able to put these beautiful herbs into a dish. So here is just a sprinkle of my beautiful oregano. The other items that I have on the plate, on my platter here, is dandelion greens. Look at these. And I just have a big barrel that I grow, and I just cut them off, and I'm going to use these as a beautiful garnish. I can also use them as a salad. They're fabulous. So you just do a quick wash and store them in your fridge. I'm going to show you how to store herbs too, so stay tuned for that. Let me show you what else I've got on my tray here. This is my thyme. So there's lots of different varieties of thyme, and this one is very delicate, and again, just like the oregano, it's going to destem beautifully. I'm going to put the leaves in this just like I did with the oregano. Look how it strips right off. It's so easy. And the more delicate pieces at the top, I can do the same way, and even if a little bit of the stem gets in there, it's not so bad. You don't really want to bite a big piece of stem. But the oregano and the thyme I use in my meatloaf. I also use it in quinoa, all kinds of grains. So brown rice, as well as bulgur, and maybe you've tried my sorghum salad, which also uses these beautiful herbs, and really anything you can get from your garden is the way to go. So I'm just going to stem these, and I'm going to use them in my dish. So let me show you a couple of more. These they kind of look like onions, right? It's actually a cross between an onion and a garlic. So I'm going to give it a quick rinse, and I'm going to show you how we're going to chop them. But I just think they're so pretty. This is just how they came out of the garden. And so once I cut off the ends, I'm going to save the center piece. Now I can absolutely use some of the tops as well. Notice when I peel off the outside, a little bit of that dry part, and really the dry part's fine. All we would do is add it to a little bit of olive oil, and it'll be fabulous. So I'm going to give this a quick rinse, and I'll show you what we do next. Now the nice thing is when you use your own items from your garden, you know exactly what kind of soil you had. So even if I have a little bit of that soil left, no big deal, because we know that it's organic. I am going to rinse them again, but I want you to see how beautiful they are. And once I do quick trim, quick chop, I can store them in my fridge, and I can use them throughout the week. So I'm going to do a quick chop, and I'm going to put them through one more rinse, and you'll see how beautiful they are. Once I get them on their final rinse, then I'm going to store them in a little bit of olive oil, and that will also bring out flavor and preserve them. So I'm going to get you I'm going to get you one more bowl, and we'll do a quick rinse here, and I'll show you how I start to just soak them in a little bit of olive oil. Again, this is the cross between the onion and a garlic. It's a special variety, and it grows in about 20 days. So it's a pretty fast growing time, which I absolutely love. So I'm going to leave a little bit of moisture in there. That way it's going to soak up and they'll be nice and plump. Then a little bit of olive oil, and they are ready to go in the fridge. And that'll be a way for me to store them, and I can use them in several different recipes. So now I've got my thyme, oregano, and my garlic. Look how pretty. So the next step is, how am I going to kind of blend these together? So if you don't have these from home, of course you can use the store-bought versions too. If you didn't have fresh thyme, it's easy to buy. You can buy them in little envelopes, and same with the oregano. But I want to show you how to store them in your refrigerator, just like this idea, and really help keep them preserved. So look what I've done here with the cilantro. I've washed it just like I showed you here, but I'm putting it with a little piece of damp paper towel. So the trick is, when you wash your herbs, you want to pull the liquid or the extra water away from the leaves. Anytime the leaves get wet is when they start to mold and get pressed, and that's not what we want. So they should be light and airy. We don't want to mash them into our container. And if we have no water left on the leaves, we can put a damp towel in the base, and that holds them beautifully. And it's the best way to store them. And then you put an airtight lid on the top, and it's ready for your fridge. So you could put a second one on the top too. Let me show you how I've done it with one other option. Here is my mint, which I absolutely love. I grow mint at home, and this one is actually store-bought. So, you can certainly do both, but I just happen to have this one. I wanted to show you how we store it. So these leaves were washed and dried, and then we layer them with the damp paper towels. And so they stay for weeks. I mean, we can go through all of this and maintain a beautiful product for at least a week and a half, as long as they're not pressed in too tight, and we've got some beautiful layers. So let me chop some of this beautiful mint as well. When we work with the mint, again, we don't really want a lot of the stem. So I'm going to pull those leaves off, and we'll just use those beautiful, delicate leaves. I especially like the ones at the very top. These work great as a garnish. So just as I was showing you with the oregano, this beautiful, delicate leaf, you can also use the mint in the same way. So we've got these beautiful, delicate leaves that actually last quite well in your fridge. So I'm going to pull off some of these leaves, and I've got a couple of really cool sauces I'm going to show you how we do. It's going to take probably about a cup of each, and I'm just going to add the mint in with my thyme. So anytime you use herbs, you can certainly mix them. Get a couple of different ones, and it just gives wonderful layers of flavor and texture. So I'm going to get 2 more leaves here and add them in. If they start to get brown, so when it's in this state, we don't really like them so much. You could cook with them, but when we're going to use them as fresh, we kind of move them off to the side because they're not nearly as pretty. But as you know, I'm going to be putting this through a food processor. So the darkness isn't going to matter as much when we either cook them or we're going to put them into the processor. But I just want you to see how beautiful and fresh they are. And if you've ever seen one of my salads, I absolutely love to put herbs in the salads too, because it adds so much nutrition as well as flavor. So I'm going to get a couple more here. Rosemary grows beautifully all over Texas, so I'm going to show you that one in a minute too. Cilantro is a cold weather herb, so it's not going to grow as well in the summer, so when we are right now. So if you love cilantro and you want to try to grow it in the summer, just get a shady spot and it'll do just fine. Let me show you some beautiful cilantro. We're going to do a quick chop. This is going to go into our chimichurri sauce. Chimichurri is so popular. It's a great topping that you can add to meats as well as any kind of grain. So this cilantro I did purchase. I do like to get organics whenever I can. And herbs are one of those because we're not always going to cook it very much. So we do want to try to make sure we get a really clean and healthy product that we can feel good about. So the organic cilantro or maybe even the parsley are going to be easy to get in small bundles at H-E-B or at Sprouts. So I've got my cilantro and it's a nice rough chop. Oh, it smells so good right now. So we've got mint aroma, we've got a little bit of our oregano, and now this beautiful cilantro that's pretty fantastic. So let's get started adding them to our food processor. So I've given you a couple of recipes. One is, like I mentioned, the chimichurri. So it's going to have cilantro as well as some garlic, some onion, and also some parsley. So I'm going to put them in my bin here. And so measuring wise, this is about a cup. Okay, I could mash it into the cup measure, but I kind of wanted to show you by hand. This is about what we want. And it does grind down pretty fast. So let's add a little bit more. And here comes my parsley. So again, this is some parsley that I purchased. This is the curly leaf. And this I got from my garden, and it is flat leaf. So let me show you the difference of these. Curly leaf is a little bit tougher. The flat leaf, it almost looks like cilantro. So notice that the leaves are very similar. But the nice thing is the different parsleys, even though one's curly and one's flat, the flavor is really the same. It's only the texture that might be something that you want to choose one over the other. So again, pick out which ones look the best. Both the parsleys grow beautifully in this season. So in the summer, definitely grow both kinds of parsley. Your cilantro, like I mentioned, grows just fine. You can put it in the shade and it'll do well. So here we go. There's a quarter of a cup of the flat leaf, and here comes the curly leaf. Now, a lot of times I will destem, especially when I'm going to use it as a garnish. When I'm going to put it into my food processor, I just get most of the stems away. So now I've got this beautiful bundle of the curly leaf. And I'm just rough chopping it, as you can see, because we know, of course, the processor is going to do a lot for us too. So I'm going to add all that in. I'm going to add a little pinch of my oregano and a little pinch of my mint, just to add a little interest and intrigue to my chimichurri. Now, I've given you a classic recipe that uses parsley, cilantro, garlic, olive oil, and lemon juice. So I added a little bit of pizzazz, so you know you can absolutely do that. You'll see lots of different chimichurri recipes. Some will even add a spice, so adding heat to a chimichurri. But that one I didn't do this time. So I'm going to squeeze in my lemon juice. I'm going to hold back the seeds. There we go, a little bit of lemon. That one did not give away very much. So I'm going to get one more, and I'm also going to do a zest. Remember, anytime you use lemon juice, you got to use the zest as well. There we go. That one's been a lot more generous. So I'm holding back the seeds. You can do it in a container, but I'm a minimalist, so I don't like to have lots of fancy equipment. But look how many seeds I did save. I'm going to bring that off to the side. One more. So as far as how much lemon juice, usually 2 lemons will be enough to give you enough juice. But again, this is one where you're creating a sauce, and it's going to be like a paste, and then your olive oil can adjust how thick you want it too. So if you're going to be putting it on a pork tenderloin or maybe some chicken breast, you want it to be pretty thick so that when you put it onto your meat, it doesn't slide off. If you're going to mix it in with a grain or a pasta, you do want it to be a little bit looser, and of course in that case you're going to add some more of the olive oil. So let me show you what it looks like in my food processor. So it's about half full. I've got about a cup and a half, maybe 2 cups in there total, and now I'm going to process. So you want to get it pretty fine. Notice I haven't put the olive oil in yet. I'm going to do it in stages so you can kind of see what it looks like. So right now it's pretty rough, still. We've got a little bit of texture in there. So the next ingredients for my chimichurri is to add the olive oil and the garlic. So now I'm going to add in my fresh garlic that I've chopped and some olive oil. There we go. Pour that in. You also are going to want to do some salt to taste, so you can decide how much you want to add. Doesn't need much. All right, let's see how it goes now. If you have a food processor that you can add moisture in or your ingredients into the top, it's also really nice to do it that way. All right, it's looking gorgeous. Let me just pull it out of my food processor so you can kind of see how pretty it's going to be. It's got lots of great texture. Look how pretty. I'm going to go ahead and bring it all the way out, adding in a little bit of salt, and we will be ready with our chimichurri. Look how pretty that is. Now, of course, we could add a little bit more olive oil. Remember I mentioned if we want it to be looser, to put over a pasta sauce, that would be wonderful. So I'm just going to kind of build it here in this bowl so you can see how much variation we have with it. So that's the first stage. See, you can see a little bit of garlic in there, got the olive oil, and of course all those wonderful herbs. Now, let's add a little more olive oil. Now, if we want to turn it into a sauce that we could add to pasta or, of course, to a meat dish and make it a little bit thicker. Here we go. That looks beautiful. Maybe add a tiny bit more lemon. I don't think I gave you any zest on that either, so let me add some zest. There we go. Zesting adds so much aroma. And this sauce is going to be lots of tart flavors, but also some soft flavors. The parsley and cilantro really add a nice blend. So again, chicken, but also fish. Chimichurri sauce is fantastic on a white fish. You could also use it for a salmon. So spreading it over that salmon just before you cook it, and then you can have a little on the side to finish it off with. There we go. Now that looks really pretty. Okay, so that is our chimichurri sauce. All right, so now I've got one more beautiful sauce to show you. Yeah, I could have processed that a little bit more. So I think for you guys at home, if you have a smaller food processor, I think it'll do really well. This one is quite large, so I don't think the blade caught it as well as mine at home. So yeah, I might have to process that one a little more, but I think it's still really pretty. All right, there is our chimichurri. Now let's go to the pesto. With a pesto sauce, we are going to use, of course, basil. Look at this gorgeous basil. Again, this is some that I picked from my garden and some that I got from the store. So notice how the leaves are quite large. And this is just a variety that I've been using. The basil leaves that are easy to grow in your garden are going to be a Thai basil, and this one is more of a conventional. So again, you're going to find lots of different varieties, and if you've never shopped for herbs, I recommend visiting a nursery that specializes in herbs, and that way they can really walk you through some of the different ones and how they will vary. But notice how pretty the leaves are. And with basil, you want to think of them as cut flowers. So in cut flowers, we put them in water, we trim the edges or the stem, and we put it in water so it kind of drinks it up from the stem. That's definitely going to keep your basil healthy and beautiful, and you can keep it on your counter in the kitchen. Now we have put it in my little tub here, and it's actually a little bit too dry. I'm actually thinking I would need to add more moisture the way my guys put this in. I don't think it'll last very well. But we also know that the leaves don't want a lot of moisture on the leaves. So that's why they were being extra careful. They probably just did a small amount. But the trick is, look how we've layered them. And so we want a good amount of air between the leaves. We don't want to press them in. And they've trimmed all the edges so that they're going to be able to absorb some moisture. So adding some of the more damp paper towels, and you can use your paper towels at home and it works really well. So if I were to layer this, I'm going to start with a damp paper towel. So let me just take these out and then use my wet paper towels. So it's just adding moisture into my chamber. So layers with a very small amount of liquid. The stems are always trimmed. So some of them I'm just going to retrim, and they will stay beautifully in your fridge. So when you harvest your basil, really just cut as much as you need. Try not to buy too much or cut too much. That way you can save it on the vine as long as possible. Okay? So we're just going to tuck individual ones in, and then I'm going to get this one a little bit more wet. Because again, we want to make sure that those leaves aren't sitting in water, but they have a little bit of moisture all around. Okay? Okay, so now we are going to do our beautiful pesto sauce, which is really special because it uses one of my absolute favorite ingredients, which is hemp hearts. So let me show you all these fabulous ingredients. So we've got our basil, and we're going to need 2 cups of basil. So on this one, I'm not even going to chop it. I'm just going to pull my leaves off and get plenty of beautiful fresh basil for my pesto. It's probably going to take about 22, maybe 25 of the leaves, and so I'm just going to pull them off, and you can put them right into your food processor with all the other ingredients. So it's going to be garlic, the hemp hearts, a little bit of lemon, just like that chimichurri, and of course our our hemp. So a typical pesto sauce will have pine nuts, and so at Powerhouse Bakery we use the hemp hearts instead. So it's really a fun variation. So there's about probably a good 2 cups of my basil. So we're going to add it right into the food processor. I'm going to turn her on. Again, if you grow basil, you can look for ones that have smaller leaves, and it works beautifully. Don't feel like you have to get this special one that are very large. All right, so here's my basil, and I'm going to add in my olive oil. And we're going to start with that. Now we're going to add in the garlic. So, garlic. And you can leave your food processor going and just slowly add in each ingredient. Makes it kind of fun because you can watch the whole process. Here we go with our beautiful hemp hearts. So see these beautiful seeds. They're very delicate and soft, very much like a pine nut. Here we go. We're slowly adding in the olive oil so it will get mixed in nicely. All right. Now let's add in our lemon juice. Let me show you how it looks. Oh, I wish you could smell it. It is amazing. Look how pretty. So the hemp hearts really add a beautiful texture to it. The only thing that's missing is a little bit of salt, maybe a little pepper if we want, and lemon juice. Look how pretty that is. So it takes a lot of basil. You saw how much I put in there, and it really presses it down as it processes all those leaves. And look how much moisture is in there. So this is a really popular one, and it's so wonderful to put on roasted eggplant. You could also put it, of course, on your pasta, and you could even put it on this beautiful spaghetti squash. So let me put this into a bowl. And if you come in and see us, you can try our spaghetti squash with this beautiful pesto. Look at how pretty that is. I'm going to add a little bit of lemon juice and then taste it and then see if we need to add a little bit more salt or maybe pepper. Here comes the lemon juice. So it's about 1.5 teaspoons. No seeds in that lemon. That's a good one. There we go. That is a great texture. Look how different this one is from our chimichurri. The chimichurri does not have the hem parts, so quite a different texture on this one. But really good flavors and loaded with nutrients. So any chance you get, make sure you grow some herbs, buy them if you have to, and make these beautiful sauces. Chimichurri uses cilantro and parsley, garlic and lemon, and then our beautiful pesto sauce is all about the basil. Loaded with wonderful basil, and then of course a little bit of lemon and a good amount of garlic, and there you have it. Beautiful sauces ready to go right from the greens. All right, guys, here it is, the hydration tea. So lots of flavors, again, come in a tea bag, and we're not really sure where they all come from, but they always smell good and they make a wonderful tea. So now I want to show you how to do it on your very own. So if we have, okay, I guess we have to cheat a little bit. We have to find some kind of tea leaves. So you could use a green tea. You could use any kind of loose tea if you'd like. This is actually one that I did make, and I dried my herbs, but you can buy one. It works out just fine. So I just dried some herbs and some lemongrass, and I put them all together in this big bin. And it smells so good. So there's dried orange rind, a little bit of the cilantro, and the coriander, which is the seed that comes out of the top of the plant. So I've just gathered those, and I just made my own little blend. So either buy one, or you can gather your own seeds from your garden and make one. The green tea, though, is a really nice base, and so you can use that as your starting point, and then you can add in some of the other wonderful flavors. So let me show you how it's done. I'm going to start with about 1 tablespoon of my green tea, so that would be 3 to 6 bags, and you're going to do about 7 cups of water. So I'm going to drop it in. You could also do lavender buds, and my wonderful friend Judy Davis, one of the divas, gives us lavender buds, and we add it into our tea, and it's amazing. It's fragrant and beautiful, and it's so fun to use. So you're going to let that steep overnight. I did use hot water from my alkaline water dispenser, and so the alkaline water doesn't do a lot of difference. They say that because of the higher pH, so the number is 7 or 8 versus 2 or 3, a higher pH is supposed to make a better tea because it gets more absorption. So more absorption from the beautiful leaves and herbs that you're putting into your water. If you don't have fancy alkaline water, regular water is fine too. But so maybe collecting some specialty teas is another way to go about getting your fun base. But once you have your base, now we can have some fun. So we let that soak or steep overnight, and then you have your ready-to-go tea. So now we can add some wonderful flavors to this. So we can make rosemary mint. So I'm going to pick some of my rosemary from my garden, and I'm going to put it right into my tea. And this is, because it's fresh rosemary, it's very oily. It has a fabulous strong flavor. And so I'm not going to leave it in too long, probably a day, maybe a day or two. But some of the herbs are softer, so you could leave them in longer. So here's my mint. I can de-stem and drop them all in, or I could just leave them right on top. But mint I really like, so I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit more in. And again, you're going to want to adjust for your own flavors, your own preference. But the rosemary, I wouldn't say leave it in more than 24 hours because it'll get really strong. You could also add some oregano. You could add some thyme. This particular recipe I really love, though. It's rosemary mint. And some of you might have seen the use of the essential oils. It's basically using the fresh herbs that have been really concentrated, so you're putting in a drop or two of the very wonderful oils that just come from the plant. So I'm going to add on to this. I've got this beautiful orange and lemon. I'm going to put that in my tea also, and it will be such a wonderful base. So 2 or 3 slices of citrus. It's best to put it in the cold tea, not in the hot tea. So it's already chilled, and I'm going to drop them in. You could even do cucumber, which is gorgeous. If you've ever been to an office that has water sitting out with cucumber, it has a wonderful flavor. So treat yourself and have a wonderful way to hydrate with some fancy beverages. So doesn't that look so beautiful? So our hydration tea is going to be some citrus. Rosemary and mint is my favorite. We could certainly use lime, and we could use lemon. So another one of my favorite hydration teas, and write this down, this is going to be not official on the books, but you could do a Texas style tea, and you could do some lime and cilantro and agave, and it's a wonderful, lightly tangy, wonderful tea that's served only in Powerhouse Bakery. So next time you want to invite some friends over and you want to give them a nice beverage, set this out. Remember, your tea has to be chilled before you add in your citrus so that it doesn't break it down. If you leave it sitting in too long, you'll get parts and pieces of the orange, which are certainly not a bad thing, but it definitely takes away from its clear, beautiful look. And then you can serve it in these beautiful jars. You can get these for under $1 at a dollar store, and it just makes it really fancy. And then when you're serving it to your friends, you can even add in a little something to their own jar. So that's when I would add another small bit of an orange slice and a little sprig of fresh mint. So I'm going to drop that in, maybe 2 slices, and then I'm going to put my beautiful end. Remember I mentioned I think the ends of this mint are so pretty. So I'm going to just drop that in. And now when I give them their bottle and they open it up, it's kind of like, wow, that's actually really beautiful. Okay, so I just used a blend of herbs. You could use a green tea base. You could use lavender buds. And if you wanted to use any kind of bagged tea, you can have all kinds of varieties for that. But it makes it so pretty to get to add in an extra little something when you're serving it to your friends. So if you wanted to use the rosemary, just take a little tip off the top and drop that in with your slice of lemon or your orange, and then a little bit of your mint top. And when they drink it, it'll be such a wonderful aroma as they take a sip. Okay, so you can also add in a little bit of sweetener. So if you're going to mix in the sweetener, just put that in before you add in your herbs, because you don't want to break down the mint and the rosemary. So a small amount of agave. So if you wanted to keep it very low sugar, you could use stevia. In this case, I'm going to use just a small amount of agave, so a teaspoon. Drop that in, and you could certainly add sweetness to your whole container, but I kind of like to customize it, so then I know exactly how much I'm going to get for each person. Add in my slices. This one's pretty full. And my beautiful orange. And there we have it. Beautiful hydration tea. And why did I call it hydration tea? I don't know, it just sounded pretty. And it's a great way to get hydration. So there you have it. Salute to health.